such a fundamental mistake or error in the system that we also as designers and maybe whole construction community do need a place, a laboratory to start rethinking issues again, redefining the values of our spaces, how our buildings and then cities might be built, having in mind all these new challenges of this century, including climate change, and also having in mind the fact that exactly the buildings and cities are having enormous impact on the future quality of life and what is happening with our planet at this moment. So that's, I thought for a long time already about green transformable buildings, and after support of Professor Jan Brouwer, maybe he is the most guilty person that I'm standing here, because I did my PhD in Delft, and the book later on was called Transformable Buildings, where I realized that there are some issues on the way buildings are put together, which are again essentially wrong, and we should rethink how we are making buildings. Where issues as design for disassembly, for example, came up as important ones. So later on, things became more interesting and complex, and I'm really very happy to see many partners of our BAM building and as material banks project, the European project, which we managed to get together with 16 partners, and hopefully we will be able to make really very important steps and changes on the European level during this project and after realizations of the project. And hopefully we will be able to come up with suggestions for new standards and regulations for building construction based on the reversibility and way of making and designing buildings that will take into account this dynamics, the need for transformation and the need to leave every generation this open space to upgrade and reconfigure their environment according to their visions of the life they have at that moment. So somehow we tend, as architects, as designers, to believe that we can design the lives of the future. As Jo said, things in life are more spontaneous and happen more spontaneous, and somehow that is not integrated in design. It's really amazing to realize that's right. So this is what we are having, we see very, very much in countries, not only in Europe, but all over around. The fact that we conceive our buildings and cities as static structures, we realize in a way that they don't have potentials for upgradability, and their only end-of-life option is basically the demolition. And then when we think about future, the world that you all mentioned a couple of times, I see a couple of trends which again have very much a huge impact on how we're going to design the future, and again brings us back to this transformation issue. There's a due to technological and ICT revolution, which is really playing an important role in this new modern world. We are witnessing this increasing acceleration of change almost on a daily basis and in all fields. And these changes affect the way we communicate work. While trends and predictions risk to be overrun at the time they are identified as such. And the question is, what is really the physical answer to this increasing dynamics, especially nowadays considering the capacity of the planet and human physical and, very important, psychological needs. So those are the questions that I hope we will be talking about very much in the coming three years, working on the lab and working on the European project. And one of the visions is to work towards the transition of our built environment from environment which is designed and built for demolition, as Greta said, buildings which are going to be raised in the future, to see them as and make them as upgradable whole society on this planet is being spent increasingly fast, and the whole management of the resources is going in a very wrong direction, basically bringing up the question of the sustainability of the life, so on the planet. What is the role of the cities and architecture in all this story, I think, is really huge, because when we see that the real life support system is very complex natural system, as you see here on these trees, which produce clean air, absorb waters, have resources for food for other species and so forth, and they are changing whole year, seasons, and maybe centuries. We are replacing these very live and complex systems with millions of cubic meters of concrete and bricks and asphalt. And basically these structures, they do not do much than being there for initial use and then being thrown away. So we are diminishing the very basic layer of life support on the planet. And therefore the cities and buildings basically are the greatest mediators between us and the various stocks and flows of environmental capital. Now, considering that, we come to the design issue and why in all this story of design will play a really important role, because it is about fundamental changes of the systems we work with. And considering the downstream of the resources, we need to imagine the new world and redefine the new value systems. And in doing that, the development of new design concepts, definitely integrating innovative engineering and production technologies as well, will be the key accelerants towards reversibility of the existing downstreams of resources. And that's why this design studios play also an important role. Working with students is an important issue in order to start working from bottom up and understanding the problem from the beginning. Because we are now living somehow between the two worlds, the world of today, which we want to really leave behind us as fast as possible, and try to move and make the very fast steps towards the world of tomorrow, which should reverse the processes of the degradation of the built environment, and then accordingly the natural environment as well. So the cities of today, obviously I try to explain it in these massive small schemes, impacting enormously the environment, basically because all our resource management is related to the market-driven consumption economy, which then is related to the linear resource consumption and manufacturing processes. The processes which know only the process of extraction of materials, production of products, use of products, and diminishing products which end up in landfills with all negative impacts of that. The key issue and the design question is how can we reverse these processes towards more circular cities and buildings which will be able to reprocess the resources within their metabolism. So the world of tomorrow, actually, I see as upgradable world with dynamic and reversible buildings, which will be able to reverse buildings and processes to the initial set of materials in order to reconfigure them and to answer these new questions. And whereby this design needs to guarantee that everything starts from the design. The drawing table needs to guarantee the circular value chain through which buildings and materials will sustain and increase their value. And that's the exercise we need to do, to reverse the processes of degradation. And you did mention a couple of buildings which have been demolished recently, and this is really the daily practice almost in the Netherlands. One example in Amsterdam, of course, which is maybe 18 years old, was 18 years old when it has been demolished, and 4 stages of end of life of the building, clearly seeing the degradation of social, cultural, and then functional materials values of the building. So this is the value option and end-of-life option that we are dealing with at the moment. And dynamic and circle buildings hopefully will shape the world of tomorrow. That would be the world in which building demolition and construction waste is seen as design mistake. And then when thinking about the future values, then I do put an equal sign to future value of the building will mean that we have reversible buildings, and that means what is reversible buildings? Reversible buildings are the buildings which have high transformation capacity and high reuse potential of their components. So there are two very important elements of the equation. The design task in all this new approach to design new buildings would be to guarantee the long-term value of buildings by this high transformation and reuse potential on 3 levels. And how we want to do that is through providing transformation potential on building level by adopting building to new requirements, transformation on system level by adopting systems to new requirements, and transformation of materials by upcycling materials to new requirements. That's where the transformation plays an important role. And then the reuse potential is about the level of reuse of buildings, reuse of systems, and reuse of elements and components. So those are the two key ingredients when trying to develop new strategies for design of upgradable buildings and dynamic buildings for the future, which we call reversible building design, aiming at keeping the materials in a use loop as long as possible. And that means that basically we are planning to, would like to have design that will guarantee the circulation of material from component systems to buildings, and through transformation, transforming the systems, the new requirements becoming again a system in the building, and if the system cannot be transformed, then elements or components are reused and go back in the loop. This the whole story, the transformation and reuse are the key elements of the reversibility equation. And in the transformation direction, the major analysis that we are looking at are to understand the interdependencies of building, parts of the building, and systems, functional interdependencies that we can find within the building. And reuse potential deals more with exchangeability and physical decomposition, and later on composition of a building. Just to visualize what these do, which I really see as the key elements of the future buildings, which are transformable, if we see them as transformable. The independency is understanding how the individual functionalities are clustered in individual modules, which are exchangeable, through which we can reconfigure this, our buildings just as the scope, the camera, which can have, again, by reconfiguration, different functions and provide different qualities. And exchangeability, meaning that we really have to focus on the interfaces, building connections, and also the standardization at a certain level of building connections, which I believe would give lots of freedom to the industry to develop new systems. In this way, exchangeable systems, which will be compatible with each other. And as I very often use as an example in this case, my mobile phone, which has one small hole, which is very standardized, and this mobile phone, by this standardized connection, has relation and connection with my house or car or a laptop. There's different components forming, again, another system, and all these different components have different functionalities and forms. That's the power of standardization of one